Hello, this is Moment of Truth on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes. Now, this doesn't happen very often, but every now and then, the rancid right-wing individuals who champion Brexit accidentally speak the truth. Maybe it's due to the drugs in their system or their aging minds. I'm not sure. But occasionally, once in a blue moon, they drop a truth bomb. And that happened twice yesterday. Firstly, Jacob Rees-Mogg admitted at the National Conservative Conference, or the Nazi conference, that the UK government, the Tory government, purposefully attempted to gerrymander the election process in their favour using compulsory voter ID. Here's the clip.
From a Conservative point of view, it is a mixed picture. We have won the nation state. There is no prospect of the UK going back into the United Kingdom, and the gerrymandering effort you've read about today of Keir Starmer giving votes to all the EU nationals here would not get us back into the European Union. It's fanciful to think that. It's a particularly silly scheme. I very much doubt they'll do it in the end. Parties that try and gerrymander end up finding that their clever scheme comes back to bite them, as, dare I say, we found by insisting on voter ID for elections, and we found that the people who didn't have ID were elderly, and they by and large voted Conservative. So we made it hard for our own voters, and we upset a system that worked perfectly well. It was one of the glories of our country, actually, that we did on an honesty basis, when the real problem is with postal voting.
And there you have it, folks. The lying, cheating, thieving Tory party in all its glory. And note that he said that the United Kingdom would not be rejoining the UK anytime soon. Jacob Rees-Mogg is not an intelligent man. He is an idiot's idea of a clever man. Anyway, this group of privately educated, elitist individuals have trampled upon our democracy, our decency, our economy, our international standing. But that wasn't the end of the truth leaking out from the private school mafia yesterday. Natterjack Toad reflected in a doorknob, Nigel Farage, appeared on Newsnight. And that's kind of inexplicable because UKIP no longer have any elected representation in this country, and his new host body, the Reform UK Party, or Refuck UK Party, only managed to secure a small number of councillors. I believe it was about 6 from around 500 fielded. Anyway, here's the clip.
Brexit's proved, I'm afraid, is that our politicians are about as useless as the commissioners in Brussels were. We've mismanaged this totally. And if you look at simple things such as takeovers, such as corporation tax, we are driving business away from our country. Arguably, now we're back in control, we're regulating our own businesses even more than they were as EU members. Brexit has failed.
For you then?
Well, I wouldn't rule it out. It's not top of my bucket list, but frankly, we've not delivered on borders. We've not delivered on Brexit. The Tories have let us down very, very badly.
Wow. Did you hear that? Farage admitting that Brexit has failed. He said it. Brexit has failed on national television. Of course, it's not his fault. It never is with these people. These are the people who said, let's do this thing. And a lot of us, like myself, said, don't do that thing. That will have really bad consequences. And they say, no, we really, really want to do this thing. I mean, they made people believe that they wanted to do this thing that no one cared about 10 years ago. No one cared about Brexit. No one cared about the EU 10 years ago. But suddenly they came along and said, oh, no, you really need to care about this. It's the most important issue in the world ever. And the most important thing is that we leave the EU as soon as possible. And so we did. And we do. And they turn around and they say, oh, no, not like that. The idea that Brexit would be anything other than a monumental failure is for the birds. Anyone with a shred of intelligence could have seen that at the time, afterwards, now. Both of these individuals, though, they don't care about telling their mouth-breathing, Brexit-voting fan base that they are liars, cheats, frauds, and traitors. They know they won't face any consequences because they're obscenely rich. They'll never have to choose between heating and eating, or experience the existential dread of everyday life as the debts pile up and the walls close in like the rest of us. Farage knew Brexit would be a disaster. So did Mogg. They knew. They knew that it would end like this. And yet they wanted it anyway. As for why, why they wanted it. That's a question for you to ask. The people in your life who voted for this monstrosity, the people who voted to impose economic sanctions on ourselves and limit the freedom of our children to live and work in 31 other countries when they grow up, the people who voted to restrict the horizons of an entire generation that wasn't even allowed to vote in that referendum. It was always going to end like this, but the speed at which it's happened is shocking even to me. I knew things would get worse, gradually, but our economy still hasn't recovered from before the pandemic. And you can't blame COVID for that, because out of the 40-odd advanced economies in the world, we're the only one that hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. And you can't tell me the fact that a pint of milk that used to be 60p, that's now 99p, has nothing to do with Brexit. It has everything to do with Brexit and everything to do with the privileged, privately educated individuals who have done more than any other group of people in history to harm this country. They have succeeded where Hitler and Napoleon failed. But the people who did this to us, the ringleaders, like Farage, like Rees Mogg, they won't simply fade away. They won't quietly disappear into the good night. Regardless of what happens in the next few years, they will attempt to linger around like a persistent bad smell, telling your neighbours, your family, your friends that your job, your opinion, your knowledge, your experience and qualifications are worthless. And the people that they should be listening to are the posh, inbred, expensively educated idiots like Farage, Rees Mogg, Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, Aaron Banks, Richard Tice. The list goes on and on. All we can do is continue to call it out today, tomorrow, next week, next year, as long as it takes, until these disgusting people are stripped of all power, influence, and respect. Until they stop being invited on national television to broadcast their lies and their venom. Until every man, woman, and child views them with the same contempt that give unfunny circus clowns who've just driven their screaming monkey clown car on fire off a cliff into a goddamn orphanage.